Okay, this video and this to start off this week, we're going to talk about project information and then the various coordinate systems that Revit uses. And so I'm working with the file that we had back in week 12, and I just added some a topo surface to it and some property lines to so you can visualize what I've got going. I'll include it in Blackboard if you want to play around with it also. Um, and you can, kind of follow along. This stuff is going to be kind of dry and boring, but you need to have some knowledge of what's going on with it. So, all right. So project information. Let's go manage, and then over here, project information. And here's where you put in the project information. Duh. Okay, so you can put in the author. We'll talk about that again a little bit later on. But down here's the big part, and these are already in the file. So the issue date is just that. That's the architect will determine when the project will be issued, meaning when it's given to the owner. Maybe released for construction, maybe not, but there'll be some kind of a date. The status where you work they'll determine how they want to use that. Of course, the client name, the project address, those kinds of things. Now, all of these, with the exception of address, are just a single line field. The project address, if you click on the box there, you get a small word processor. So that you can put multi-line text in. Okay, and so that's that kind of stuff. Now let's look at a drawing sheet, and the title block. This one is set up so that it has the owner name, the project name. This, of course, is the drawing name. And here we've got project number, which we had over there. The date, which is the release date or the project issue date. And if you select the title block, you get all of those things over here in the properties for the title block. Now, drawn by, you notice where I filled in for author did not bring it over. So I had typed it in on this one. And so if I change that to author, it just changes the word author back over here. So I had to type it in. And then every drawing sheet, you'll have to type that in again, even when you create new ones. So, there's a site plan here, so that has to be changed also. All right. So that's kind of project information kind of stuff. Now, project location, right here. Oh, wrong one. The top one. I want to go location. This sets the geographic location for the project, where it's located on the surface of the earth. And right now I'm getting an error for some reason. I'm recording this at home, and for some reason my internet connection is not connecting with a mapping service. So I'm going to say no. It worked fine in the lab last week. Anyway, what you would see here is like Google Maps or Bing Maps. I don't know which the service it is, but it's basically a mapping system, okay? And you can put in your project address here and it will jump right to it, okay? Or search and it'll go to it. Or you can define the location by the default city list and choose your default city out of some of the major ones that are listed here. And so I'm just going to scroll down and select Atlanta, Georgia. Or you could put in the latitude and longitude of whatever location it is. Okay, and then here if you're going to be doing like sun studies and shadow studies, things like that, you would want to turn on daylight savings time if you're in daylight savings time. So we'll say OK. All right, so now that didn't affect our drawings in any way, but if I go to my 3D view and I come down here and I turn on shadows. Now we get a building shadow, but it's just a generic shadow. So I want to go to sun path and go sun settings. And if I go to still, here I've got my location, the date, and the time, which is what time it is right now. And change my ground plane level to that. And I'm going to say OK. You notice my shadows changed based on this. If this were true north at 1:57 in the afternoon, that's what the shadows would look like on the building. Okay. And so you could, this also works if you're doing like internal views, internal cameras or interior cameras. You can see how the sun will shine in the window and create shadows inside. All right, so we're not going to do that today, but not in this video. So I'm going to turn, but that's how your coordinate system works. Okay, so the project, if you remember, I talked previously a little bit about these different things here, the project base point and the survey point. It's good practice to have your project base point at one corner of your building. And the best way to do that is when you first start doing your building and you set in your grid lines, start your grid lines at the project base point. That way you don't have to move it later and you don't have to adjust it. But to do those things, I'm going to hover over it, and the project base point is selected right now, so I'll click it and I'm going to move it down and drop it on those grid lines. Now you notice that it tells me that it's down 24 feet and 28 feet to the left, or to the left from my internal coordinates. And then I can select my survey point and move it down here also. Okay, so I would recommend getting the project base point and your building in the right location at the very beginning of your project. So that means when you start drawing your first grid lines, you make them intersect on the project base point, and then you pin those two things. Then you draw your other grid lines the correct distance out. Okay, so those are those kinds of things. Now, I'm going to, let's see, let me get this next file open. And I want you to open this one. This is the coordinates file. And what we have here are 3 different types of coordinates. Within Revit, we got 3 coordinate systems. We've got an internal coordinates, which in this case are things in black. And what the internal coordinate system is all of the components of your model are located based on the internal coordinate system. There's an X and a Y and a Z coordinate for everything, doors, windows, walls, cabinets, furniture, all those things. Okay, so the green, what's in green is the project base point. It's the project base point, but it's the project coordinate system, and it's based on that base point right there. What's in magenta is the shared coordinate system, which is based on the survey point. Okay. Now, if we move these things around, you can see how they affect the coordinate system of various things. So I'm going to select my project base point, and I'm going to move it. I'm going to move it way over here, so it's got some really weird numbers to it. Okay, so now you can see my internal coordinates did not change because they're internal based on the model. Okay, the shared coordinates, the magenta ones, they did not change because they're based on the survey point. But the green ones, the project coordinate systems, changed because they're based on that project base point. Okay, so I'm going to Control Z, and I didn't move the building. Okay, all I did was move the base point. So I'm going to Control Z to undo that. Now let's look at the survey point. And sometimes you have to hover and tab. Okay, so now I got the survey point and I select it. Now this one has a paper clip. So that means you have a clipped mode and an unclipped mode. So if you move it while it's clipped, it changes your coordinate system. Okay, your shared coordinates. If you unclip it and move it, only the marker moves. The shared coordinate system does not change. So let's demonstrate both of those. So I've got it selected, so I'm going to pull it down here a little bit. So you can see all my magenta values changed because I moved the base point. And so now this tells me that the corner of the building here is 18 feet 7 inches to the north and 4 inches to the east from my survey point. Okay, so let's Control Z to undo that, select it again, and unclip it, and then I'll move it. And you notice the coordinate system did not change, but the marker moved, and it's got a move value here, but the coordinate system didn't change. So I'm going to Control Z and go back. And let's make sure that that is clipped. Okay, it is clipped. Now, you can move your building without moving the base point. You get into some weird kind of things sometimes. But let's come up here to Manage. And what we've got different, we talked about the location one there. Coordinates, here you can manage coordinates here. You can reset, you can specify several things here. You can kind of play around with those and read the help files and stuff like that. Okay. But on the project location, the position. So if I need to move my project, relocate it, and this works vertically and horizontally. Okay, depends on what view you're in, but you can relocate your project. And basically what you're doing now is you're picking a start point, and I'll just pick a snap there, and I'm going to move it 12 feet up. So you noticed the model moved, the building moved, project base point moved, but the survey point did not move. Okay, so that moved everything except for the survey base point, but it didn't affect any of the coordinate systems that moved. Okay, so there's some different things there. And then you saw on there when we pull down, you can mirror your project. Maybe you want a left-right version or a north-south version. You can do that. You can change your project north should you need to. you can rotate your true north. We'll talk about true north, project north again in just a moment here. Okay, so this is, it's kind of confusing, I know, but you do need to have an understanding of how things are linked and into the model based on their coordinates. Because when you go to creating linked files or inserting models from other projects into a project, remember it asked you, do you want to go origin to origin or center to center, things like that. So the origin is your project base point. Now let's go back over here to this project, and if we look at, let me open up level 1. When we do our projects, most of the time what's considered the south elevation will be the front of the project, okay, the front of the building. The north elevation would be the rear of the building, and we call these, north, south, east, west, simply because one's at the top, one's at the bottom, one's at left, one's at right. It is not indicative of true north and south based on a compass or a map. Okay. That's just the way things are drawn. Now, on our site, because most buildings are not built facing north and south, okay, let's face it. So let's select our survey point. That got the property line. There. Okay, so it wasn't that. What happened? I want the base point, project base point. Here we have what angle to true north. And what this will do, I'm just gonna put in 30 degrees. It moved my base point. Wow, my survey marker. Now, what I did is I told Revit that my project is 30 degrees off of true north. And on the site plan, I come over here. Where's it at? Right here, orientation. I changed my site plan to be to true north. And now you can see it rotates it on my site plan. I'm not sure why that moved. Maybe I clicked something. It rotates my site plan. Oh, I don't want that one anymore. But all my building levels stay the same. Everything else stays the same because the orientation for them is project north. Okay. And so if I go to my site plan drawing, here we've got it rotated on the drawing so that the land and the building is oriented based on true north of a map and a compass, which is the way site plans usually are done. Okay. And your tags will be adjusted based on that, because if you had looked at my property line tags beforehand, they were based on property north. Now we've established things to true north, so it updates and changes those. All right, so that's about project information, coordinate systems, and in your orientation. So I'm going to pause this one, and then we'll come back with the rest of it.